Jimmy Carter died on December 29th, 2024, at the age of 100 from his home in Plains, Georgia. And certainly, this wasn't something that was unexpected. This was something that was expected because most people pass away, and he did live to be 100. But it wasn't the unexpectedness of his death that was most remarkable. It was how the public responded. And in the public response, I saw something very interesting I feel like it would be good to talk about. Jimmy Carter is generally very well regarded as a former president, but he never got his flowers as a political figure, although a lot of people don't think there's anything wrong with that. And there's just something I want to speak about in regards to his legacy today. What the heck am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the fact that over the years, there's been one element about Jimmy Carter's legacy that has stood the test of time, and it's that most people agree that he was inept as a president, but he was a great person in general. I mean, we're talking about someone who established the Habitat for Humanity and helped eradicate the guinea worm. So, yeah, a pretty awesome human being, and one that you would think most people would want to see themselves in. A reflection of the best parts of who we are as people. But that's not really the case when you look at it objectively, which is what I decided to do recently. And the strangest thing about it is that, at least in my mind, it's very strange to view Jimmy Carter as a failed president, but a successful man, because it would stand to reason that anyone who had the altruistic high moral standards and actions that saw real results that Jimmy Carter had, you would think that the presidency would be the best years of their life, but it wasn't the case. In fact, he did win the Nobel Peace Prize well after he served as president. But I mean, when you look into it, it didn't really seem that bad. It seemed more like the era in which Jimmy Carter was president was one in which no leader would be seen as a stalwart or tenable. And there were a lot of decisions that had to be made in our culture that unfortunately he was tasked with making. And not everything that happened during his political career was his fault. I mean, when you look it up, I mean, there's the 3 Mile Island incident in which Jimmy Carter wanted this country to adopt nuclear power as an alternative. And it wasn't his fault that the 3 Mile Island incident happened. He wanted to move the United States away from the Cold War framework of the late 70s. It wasn't his fault that Iran had a revolution. I mean, there are a lot of things that just can't be attributed to Jimmy Carter, as well as some things that can be attributed to Jimmy Carter that are positive, such as the establishment of the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, and just in general, him handling the elements of stagflation, though he was ultimately unsuccessful because of destabilized regions around the world. There's still a lot of good things from his presidency that are still with us today. In fact, I don't think he should be faulted for trying to turn this country to the metric system. If he was successful, that would have been great. And there's also other dynamics of his post presidency that are just alarming. But not to go too deep into that, to touch on the idea that I really want to speak about. And it's that it's funny to me that we can see Jimmy Carter as good in general, but inept politically, because it makes me wonder what it says about a country that doesn't see themselves in someone like Jimmy Carter, but is willing to vote for the person who's currently going to take the presidency in a few weeks. I mean, we don't see ourselves in a gentleman who stayed married to his wife for over 60 years and faithful. We see ourselves in a candidate who had multiple wives and even was alleged to have cheated on her while she was pregnant. There is so many strange things to unpack with that dynamic. I mean, we don't see ourselves in the person who actually did something about housing. We see ourselves in the person who was an alleged slumlord. We don't see ourselves in a person who tried to eradicate the guinea worm. We see ourselves in the person who botched the COVID-19 response so badly that there are still variants affecting us 4 years later. We don't see ourselves in the altruism and goodness of a person like Jimmy Carter. Apparently, collectively, we see ourselves as sleaze. We see ourselves as full of hate and prejudice and anger. And that's very alarming to me because, to be honest, hopefully we've evolved enough since that time period in history, and we will see in 4 years if you think about it. But there should be more people like Jimmy Carter in our government, more people who have high moral standards and will seek action that will make definitive and positive change. I think we took the wrong lessons from the man's life. And I think that we've manifested that lesson in some very crude ways. And now we're facing the exact opposite of a person like Jimmy Carter. And people still think that things are going to be fruitful. And it just seems a shame that we can't look at politics as a realm for people with the willpower and the determination to do what's right each and every time. I mean, seriously, there's a guy that we relate to who held a Bible upside down in a photo op, and not the person who was still a pastor while he was running for president. Not the humble peanut farmer, the casino owner who went bankrupt. I just don't understand, but I will say that I feel like that statement is 100% true. If we really want to honor the legacy of Jimmy Carter, we should have more people like him in government. We should have more people like him, not just because of his high moral standards, but because we could learn to help fix some of the problems that he started. And I don't think we're heading down that road, and that might not be good for us as a culture. Look, all I know about the legacy of Jimmy Carter and the legacy of the presidency is that he wasn't the worst president, definitively wasn't the worst president, and it's a shame that he's remembered for so many bad things that happened to him and not the wonderful things that he made manifest in this world. And we could all stand to be more like Jimmy Carter and want to have a legacy like his, because it definitively means that there are more people that care about making the world a better place. And ultimately, that's good for everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want. I want to hear what your thoughts are about Jimmy Carter as a person or a president, if you think about him at all. And what do you think it means for government that we don't have more people like him? So again, thank you for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.